In this video, we'll explain how to reverse engineer the behavior of a transformer language model. What do we mean by that? Well, it's quite simple. Given a model and a task it can solve, we want to provide a step-by-step explanation or algorithm describing how it solves the task. Reverse engineering the behavior of a language model is the main endeavor of so-called mechanistic interpretability. One specific approach within mechanistic interpretability is the one based on circuits, which is also referred to as circuit analysis. As the name suggests, this approach aims to dissect a transformer model and find the specific computational paths and components, that is, the circuits, that are responsible for or underlie a certain model behavior. Using a metaphor that is perhaps not entirely accurate, but which conveys the idea well, we can say that circuit analysis is to language models what neuroscience is to the human brain. Neuroscience aims at localizing the neural pathways that are responsible for the execution of a given task in the human brain. For example, we know that the brain networks responsible for mathematical calculations differ from those responsible for processing visual content. Knowing this is useful for several reasons. It helps us understand the structure and function of the brain and nervous system, which are fundamental to all aspects of human behavior, cognition, and health. Similarly, circuit analysis reverse engineers the behavior of a language model to discover how a model solves a task, what internal components are involved in that process, and where they are located. This enables a deep understanding of how these complex models make decisions, which in turn can improve model transparency, trustworthiness, and reliability, facilitate debugging and optimization, help identify and mitigate biases, and ensure that models are safe and effective for real-world applications. All this sounds very appealing, but it can be quite tricky. Language models are complex, so there might be no simple algorithm explaining how they solve a particularly complicated task. At the same time, circuits work quite well for relatively narrow tasks. For example, suppose that we are dealing with a task that involves outputting a valid plausible year for an input like the war lasted from the year 1741 to the year 17... Note that here, we are not interested in the truthfulness of the output. We are not considering a specific war, but only in the model's ability to predict a number greater than the one in the input sentence. Indeed, we refer to this task as the greater than task. Suppose that we feed this input to our model, and surprisingly, we find that the model is able to generate valid next word predictions. Technically speaking, it gives high probability to outputs like 42, 63, or 99. This is a perfect scenario for applying circuit analysis, by which we can discover what algorithm does our model use to solve this task, which parts of the model implement this algorithm, and how do they do so. Let's look at the diagram here, which explains how a language model, GPT-2 small, performs on the greater than task. The left part of the diagram answers the question, which components of the model implement the algorithm? While the right part of the diagram answers the question, what does each component do? Together, they form an explanation of GPT-2's algorithm for the task. Let's walk through the circuit diagram step by step. First, the model takes in the input and converts it into embeddings, as is done for all inputs. Next, this input is passed to two distinct groups of model components, shown in gray. They prepare the inputs for further processing by performing subject enrichment, but we won't go into this in detail. In the following step, things become very interpretable. The output of the last step is passed to a group of attention heads, shown in blue, that attend to the token 41 in the sentence, identifying it and making that token more probable in the output. Finally, the output of that step is passed to another set of model components, that is, 4 multilayer perceptrons or MLPs. These 4 components give more probability to the correct ears, those that are greater than 41. By the end of the model's 4 pass, the model has determined the correct output. Now we understand what circuits are, but how can we prove that they really explain model behavior? In this case, the behavior we care about is the model's ability to upweight ears that come after 41, as opposed to those that don't. So, we'll quantify our model's behavior via the probability that it assigns to valid ears minus the probability assigned to invalid ones. Then, to prove that our circuit contains all important components, we are going to knock out or ablate all parts of the model that are not in the circuit, like attention layers 10 and 11, and other components that are not shown here. You can think of this as zeroing out the outputs of each such component. We will explain more in the next video. If we have truly captured all the relevant model components, then model performance should stay the same, even though we have ablated a lot of the model. As we can see in this diagram, this is the case. This test is crucial for circuits. While techniques like probing or feature attribution may not accurately reflect models' internal mechanisms, this test draws a causal connection between the internal components we identify and the external behaviors we observe. This proves that we found the right components. How to prove the correctness of the semantic labels for our circuits is still an open question. Now, you know what a circuit is, a neat way to reverse engineer language model behaviors. Circuits tell you step by step how a model does a task and can be tested. But how do you find a circuit? In the next video of this series, we'll explain the techniques used to uncover circuits for any task.